Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight. I'm Phil Ponce. On this Thursday, January 28th, Mayor Rahm Emanuel is here to talk about the gridlock in Springfield, the financial crisis at Chicago Public Schools, and police accountability. A former hedge fund manager is focused on Chicago, introducing his new approach to education that involves hustle and flipping the classroom. Hear from the founder of the free nonprofit online learning website, Khan Academy.
This room represents our history of collecting over the past 40 years as an institution.
The leading photography museum in the Midwest opens its archives and rediscovers some of its best photographs of the past 150 years. And viewers have their say about the state of the state in tonight's feedback. All that and more next on Chicago Tonight. Thanks for joining us. Here's what's happening in Chicago tonight. The Chicago Teachers Union says it has received what it's calling a serious offer from the Chicago Public Schools. The school district and the union have been in protracted negotiations over a new teacher's contract. Earlier this evening, the union announced a possible breakthrough after the day's bargaining session wrapped up. In a statement, Union President Karen Lewis said the basic framework calls for economic concessions in exchange for enforceable protections of education quality and job security. The potential agreement now goes to a 40-person committee of union members who will discuss and vote on the deal on Monday. And Paris Schutz will ask Mayor Emanuel about the teacher's contract in just a moment. Federal prosecutors say Dennis Hastert has more than one victim. Hastert's attorneys and prosecutors appeared before federal judge Thomas Durkin at a hearing to delay the former House Speaker's sentencing in a hush money case. His lawyers say Hastert nearly died recently after a stroke and infection. So far, Hastert has only been accused of paying off one person to cover up past misconduct, widely reported as sexual abuse of a minor. At the hearing, a federal prosecutor said there are multiple victims involved in the case. Judge Durkin delayed the sentencing until April. The Art Institute gets a new director with a focus on the modern. James Rondeau is currently the museum's head curator of contemporary art. The 46-year-old joined the museum in 1998. He oversaw a streamlining of the Art Institute's modern and contemporary collection and helped land a $400 million gift of contemporary art from two Chicago donors. Rondeau says the Art Institute hopes to continue to grow its collection of modern and contemporary art and beef up its collection of Asian art. Car-sharing service Uber opens a new facility in West Pullman. The company says the South Side location is its fourth partner support center in Chicago. 8 employees will work with the independent contractor drivers that Uber's service relies on. The company says South Side customers take tens of thousands of trips per week.
No cabs coming to the far South Side. Uber and nobody else. If we take a cab from the city and come down on this area, you should see how fast he turn around and go back. But I can say today, I'm glad to be a supporter of Uber.
Uber says it hopes to recruit 10,000 drivers from the west and south sides of Chicago. As for the weather, partly cloudy tomorrow with a high near 34. Well, it's only January, and the new year has shown no shortage of challenges so far for Mayor Emanuel. The political stalemate in Springfield drags on as the Chicago public school system faces financial collapse, and as federal investigators begin a probe of the police department following the Laquan McDonald shooting. The city is seeing a spike in gun violence. Paris Schutz is with the mayor right now to find out how he plans to tackle these mounting problems. Paris.
Thanks, Phil. And joining us now is Mayor Emanuel. Thank you for being here, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Paris.
So we just heard about that possible tentative agreement on a new contract with teachers that would require concessions on both sides. What specifically are those concessions?
Well, first of all, as noted by the CTU leadership, they're obviously pulling their group together on Monday. I think it's better for me to characterize it as very good discussions with a lot of respect on both sides for the challenges facing, but to try to create a win-win situation for both teachers, taxpayers, and most importantly for our students. And I don't want to go farther than that in trying to characterize it, because it's been a very honest and I think a healthy working relationship over a number of weeks to get to a place where I think that we would see what the teachers need to see and the type of protections, but also the type of things that are necessary for taxpayers and students to see. And I think that kind of mutual respect I want to maintain.
One of the big sticking points with teachers was having teachers pay their full 9% share of their pension costs. Safe to say they're going to be paying that share next year?
I'm not going to take one item out or characterize it, because you have to see everything in its whole, and I want to do it in a way. My general rule, because they're going to go right now, as you know, Monday to the bargaining unit, is to respect their process, but to know that there was a good faith effort on both sides to get to a point of mutual agreement that's beneficial to teachers, taxpayers, and most importantly to our students and their education. And I think in these type of situations, I want to respect the process, respect the people that worked hard at this, all of us, but do it in a way also where I think at this point, less said is better.
And CPS, though, is saying that this contract would, or this agreement would avert mid-year layoffs and class size increases, when you'd been saying all along that there was no way to avert that without help from Springfield. Help isn't coming, so how are you averting it?
What I said was, and I think what Forrest said, and what I've always said, as recently as last week when Forrest and CPS leadership made major cuts at the central office and bureaucracy, it's always to protect the classroom. A lot of the challenges and the decisions we've made is to protect class size in the classroom from any cuts and to make sure that our kids have the time they need and the education they need, which is why you're seeing all the educational gains, because of the hard work our teachers are making. I do believe that part of the solution is obviously reaching agreement, but a bigger part of the solution is making sure that Springfield steps up and is a partner to the changes and the stabilization of the finances.
But how are you getting through this year at CPS without that $500 million in help from Springfield?
There's a number of things. Well, first of all, there's not to say Springfield has some time here to be a partner. Well, I think it's very important, Paris, to remember.
That bill's DOA. It's not going anywhere.
Well, you're making a conclusion before you. I would not draw that conclusion. And the reason I don't, and I don't know what bill you're referring to, but if you're saying Cullerton,
the one that Senator Cullerton had passed.
You know, I don't actually take that, and I don't say I wouldn't take the position you just said. First and foremost, I think it's important to remember, Illinois is either 48th or 50th out of funding of all states for education, dead last. That's unacceptable whether you're Chicago, whether you're Aurora, whether you're Peoria. That is unacceptable for a major state in the United States of America. Second, there is a structural inequity that has existed for decades where the taxpayers in Chicago have to pay for Chicago teacher pensions and every other teacher's pension. We have paid at CPS the last 2 years more into the teacher's pension than the prior 15 years. And that is not any support from the state, but they pay for every other teacher's pensions and use taxpayer money out of Chicago to do it. Those are the driving factors of the financial inequity and disruption in the system. And what we're asking for Springfield is not to do something extraordinary, but do what everybody else has been receiving, which is support for their teachers' pensions.
I should clarify, the reason I said it was DOA was because Speaker Madigan said he didn't support it. It wasn't going anywhere.
Well, the
in
issue
the House.
is about making sure that there's, you're not just reorganizing the pie, but as I think John Cullerton just noted, is also to make sure that it's what's called a hold harmless for the other areas. And there's a way to create greater funding support for school systems like Chicago, where close to about 90% of our kids are at poverty or below. We receive less support today, around $45 million, from the state than we did the year before. And yet all the educational gains in the state are being done by our teachers in Chicago.
From what I understand,
both on graduation rates and national test scores.
And from what I understand, that there's about $1 billion in short-term loans that you're using to get through this year without that $500 million in relief. How will you pay that back? We're told it has to be paid back by the end of the calendar year.
Yeah, I think, Paris, what you should see, and the reason I do believe we're going to get some progress out of Springfield is because the course Springfield on is not only unsustainable for Chicago, which is the economic engine of the state. You know, right now, without a budget, the state of Illinois has run up close to about $7 billion in unpaid bills. They can't go 2 years like that. They're going to have to come to terms, and that's where we're going to make sure that the Chicago Public Schools, both the Speaker, the Senate President, have been committed that Chicago Public Schools will be their #1 priority, and I'm confident we're going to get our way through to get the equity and the fairness in financing for education.
Speaking of needing stuff from Springfield, will you push for a $170 million new tax levy to go to teacher pensions that you would need Springfield to approve?
I've been clear from day one. about what I think is an agreement, or what I call a three-way handshake between the teachers union, the taxpayers of the city of Chicago, and the state. And all those pieces have to be a part, and that would be part of stabilizing our teachers' pensions and the funding for them. Remember, the Chicago Teacher Pension Fund is one of the best funded in the state of all funds because of what we have done. That said, it's a three-way handshake. It would not only help stabilize the Teachers Pension Fund, it would help stabilize CPS's finances.
Speaking of CPS's finances, there was supposed to have been an $875 million bond offering going to market yesterday. It was pulled back. Is that a sign that investors are scared to death of CPS debt?
No, we're going to find the right time. It's going to go forward next week. Like all these type of things, you want to find the most opportune time to go forward, and we're going to do that and go forward.
And did the governor's calls for bankruptcy scare away investors at all?
Yeah, well, I think it was not helpful. I think clearly that kind of, in my view, loose talk like that was not helpful. That said, I think that we're going to take the investors want to see the time, they want to see everything involved in it. They also took note of the changes that Forrest and his team made at the central office and the cuts that they did there. But it is going to go forward next week.
What about the governor's calls for a statewide takeover of Chicago public schools? Why not go along with that if finances continue to deteriorate?
It's ironic. Look, we're working through, like is noted by the Chicago teachers in their statement, working towards an agreement on a contract. The last place you want financial advice and counsel is from a state that hasn't passed a budget, has $7 billion in unpaid bills, kids quitting college because they can't afford to go there. You're going to seek financial advice from there. My view, take your energy and time as it relates to finances, get your budget done. As it relates to the school finances, stop being dead last in financing of education on one of 50 states, or near dead last. Second, stop, this is not the governor's fault, but it is history, and everybody's acknowledged and talked about it for years. We cannot continue to have the inequity as it relates to to teachers' pensions. Every teacher in the state, every school system in the state is subsidized by the state of Illinois on their pensions. They pay the freight, except for Chicago. That has to end. It's unfair because you're teaching students and teachers in Chicago different than you treat everybody else. So we're one state, one future.
Is it an unequivocal no that you would say no to a state takeover of CPS under any circumstances?
Yeah, it's not necessary in place. I think if they have that type of time on their hands, then pass a budget.
I want to go to a viewer question we had on Facebook. This is Jonathan Kaplan, who asked, do you support the release of TIF funds to make up for some portion the CPS budget shortfall?
Yeah, we've already, we do that every year. We did additional funds of TIF funds for the Chicago Public Schools, and know that the TIF, all the TIF resources throughout the city, the number one recipient is Chicago Public Schools through construction. And in this budget that we just passed, our balanced budget, back in the fall, we had additional resources. I'm doing this by memory so I can be a little shy. I think it's an additional $30 million in TIF resources for the public schools.
Well, now, there's some state lawmakers that are saying there's as much as $350 million in those TIF surplus accounts. Is that true?
No, well, first of all, they always go through this. There isn't that type of surplus. We surplused these resources. That's how I got the additional money. And the number one, 80% of the money from TIFs go to public schools, public libraries, public transportation, and public roadways and public parks. That's where the resources go. The number one recipient, public schools.
I want to get to this Better Government Association story that says that CPS does not know what happened to equipment from closed schools, despite hiring a contractor for $25 million to manage the logistics of the school closings. How is that possible?
It's unacceptable. And I told Forrest they got to get to the bottom of that.
But does this go to your management? It was your school board that approved this contract?
No, they have to find the resources. They have to find what happened to that material. And that's what Forrest knows is a priority to get done.
What about the contractor that got $25 million just to manage the logistics of the school closings? Well, they didn't do such a good job, it seems like.
Well, first of all, let me say this. The number one goal on the school closings was to get our kids also to better schools. And the University of Chicago report shows that's exactly it. 83% of our kids got to better schools. And that's number one was the goal. Two, they actually got to not only better academic schools, better physical layout of the schools, and the investments were made there. That was our priorities, and that was accomplished. Third, they will get to the bottom of this as it relates to some of the equipment.
And when is the deadline for them to come back to you
The
with?
force is working on that right now. They're getting to the bottom of it.
Okay, I want to move on to some of the crime numbers. Some disturbing totals here with murders. 45 murders this year. It's almost double this time last year. Has this focus on police shootings diverted our attention from the bigger problem of civilian shootings?
Well, the responsibility and the cause of violence are illegal guns and gangs. Has always been and is today. And when people sometimes say, well, it's the police, their responsibility, or the onus is on the police. No. The onus is on gangbangers and the guns, and those are the ones that have to be held accountable.
Why is the problem doubly worse now?
Well, it's always been that situation. Look, our officers right now, you and I are talking. Across the city of Chicago, officers are responding to 911 calls. You're not going to read about it. You're not going to hear about it because they've done a great job and they do it responsibly. They do a very difficult and dangerous job, and they do it well. When one is not doing it well, that is unprofessionally, they need to be held accountable. When they do perform well, they need to be held up for what they've done. They are also human beings. They're aware of what's being talked about, and it does have an impact. But that said, who is responsible for the violence are the gangbangers. Who's responsible for the violence are those who market in illegal guns. And what we have to do is shut off both the flow of guns into the city of Chicago and hold the gangbangers responsible for their actions. And I would say this, everywhere I go, and I say this to public, we have meetings between the police and community leaders locally. I've done about 9 of those meetings. Just recently one in Rogers Park. I'll be doing another one in the coming days in another part of the city, and I think in the Bronzeville community. If you believe your police locally are doing a good job, tell them. They need to hear it now. They're conscious of what's being said around there. They're conscious of it. But
some of those things said by you, very harsh things, said at a city council speech.
When there is an issue about not holding up the best, highest professions, yes, we're going to have a system of accountability, of discipline. But I've also said, and I continue to say, as I said in that speech, our officers, every day, thousands of them, do a great job and do their job well and professionally. And they have to be recognized, and the individuals that don't need to be held accountable. And we're going to have to work through this. And I also said, Paris, since at that speech and the night before I came here, this is going to be a long and bumpy road to get to the right types of reform so we are a better police department with better trust in the community, so we have the type of safety we need. Because without trust, without cooperation, the police will only be patrolling. With trust, with cooperation, you're going to have a police department that's part of a community, and that's how you get the public safety we need.
So when you say they're aware of what's being said, is this, for lack of a better term, cops going into the fetal position because of all the rhetoric surrounding Laquan McDonald?
It's a changed environment. They're only human beings. They are doing their job professionally, but they are also aware of what's being said, and we have to differentiate.
So there's causation here. There's a connection.
No, I want to be clear. No, because a lot of times you're going to put the violence on them. The violence and the person accountable, the address for that violence, are the gangbangers. That is who has to be held accountable. Our officers are there to stop it, and they are doing a difficult job, a dangerous job, and the lion's share of them, thousands of them, just like I said a minute ago. I want to repeat it. Across the city today, right now as I'm sitting here with you, Paris, we're talking, there's officers responding to a 911 call. You're never going to read about it. You're never going to hear about it because they did their job and they did it well. And they have to be recognized. They are the face of the police department. They're the professionalism of the police department. When an individual does not hold up the highest standards, we have to have a system that holds them accountable so the public knows it and their colleagues know it. But on the other hand, when those officers who do their job well and do it professionally, they need to be held up as the example of what we want to see, because that's the best way we're going to get the cooperation, the trust, and the best police department that has a community working with them.
And today you announced some new tactics to deal with this spike in murders. Can you elaborate on that?
There's a couple things that not so much I, as Acting Superintendent Escalante, I do support them. We've reviewed them. A couple things that I think are essential. In the impact zones where you have saturation, a lot of officers have been on what I would say beat officers walking. We're going to get them vehicles so they can cover more real estate in a more effective presence. That will have a saturation type quality. Second, coming up next week, we're one of the largest classes, about 100 officers who are sergeants will be graduating. Those are your frontline management. They're going to be responsible for where officers go. They're going to be responsible for what happens in that area, and that type of line management is essential to driving the type of proactive policing we want to see in the community policing we want to see in the city of Chicago. There'll be other things that we're mentioning, but that is a greater visibility with a greater concentration in the very areas that are seeing this spike in gun violence.
Do you believe this will bring those numbers down throughout the year?
Not single-handedly, no. But will they contribute? Yes. I mean, there's other factors, and I don't want to, this is for criminologists, but I read this stuff, is obviously we're having a warmer winter. That has an impact. But ultimately, illegal guns in the hands of individuals who need to be held accountable for the crimes they commit.
Well,
And I would say on the alternative side, beyond the policing, beyond breaking up gangs and holding them accountable, we also need to make sure, like we have in after school, like we have in summer jobs, like we have in mentoring programs, invest in the opportunity for young men, principally, not only, to have an alternative and a positive alternative that gives them an opportunity where gang life is not the only choice they have. So when you say, and a lot of people want to try to find the one thing, are better gun laws important? Absolutely. Better strategies and more policing, doing community policing? Absolutely. Also alternatives where we give young men not one choice, but the right choice, which is a positive place, a job, an opportunity where they can see their own self-worth. And so the basic strategy is to put more police on the street and get kids, guns, and drugs and gangs off the street.
But there was a DNA Info article showing that the amount of gun seizures has gone way down this year. Is that a problem?
Without a doubt.
And why is that?
I mean, gun seizures is anything that's less in the kind of interdiction area. I want to, it's a little, I don't want to say early. I'm going to be working with John Escalante. Why is the gun seizures are down? But the fact is, I know, having visited numerous TAC units, numerous roll calls, our officers are doing a good job. They're doing it in a very dangerous situation, and we need to keep encouraging them to do proactive community policing. That is the goal, and they want to do their job.
Speaking of doing their job, how is John Escalante doing as the interim police chief?
Hey, look, I really think John stepped up in a very difficult time, in a difficult moment. He stepped up to steer the police department that's at a point in which it's going through some changes and reforms that are necessary, and they're an essential, and he's committed to helping keep Chicago, as he says in his own words. He's proud when he puts on that police uniform, and he wants others to be proud, and they have to make the type of changes that are necessary. So I admire his leadership. I admire his selflessness in stepping up to the leadership role he has done. And
you've brought in Charles Ramsey, the former chief in D.C. and Philly, a Chicago native, as a $350 an hour consultant to the CPD. He said he's not interested in the superintendent post. Would you like him to take that post?
This question came before, so I mean, the way I say it, if somebody says they're not interested, the goal is given the responsibilities that
You have a history of persuading people to do things they didn't want to do initially.
That is true, but that said, usually, well, first of all, let me say this. I'm pleased that we have Charles Ramsey as an advisor. He's from Chicago. He's the author of Community Policing, and having been superintendent in both D.C. and in Philadelphia, where they had a partnership with the Justice Department, a pattern and practice type partnership, he knows how to steer us, help us steer through this. That said, that's the role he will do, and he will report to the new superintendent.
Since the last time you were here, Mayor, your office released all the emails pertaining to the Laquan McDonald case. Yeah. And from various reports, it's clear that your top aides and the Department of Law attorneys knew things about this case long before you say you knew about it. Does this mean your staff insulates you from this kind of information regularly?
No, I think that as I said on your show, and we talked about it before, Paris, what I knew and at the point is not only the shooting, I knew that both the U.S. Attorney, in the name of the Justice Department, the FBI, the state's attorney, as well as IPRA were all doing the investigation which is necessary. IPRA has made their conclusion, the state's attorneys made their conclusion. Obviously, the Justice Department, through the U.S. Attorney, is still working on it. I'm hoping that they come to a conclusion of their own investigation.
But it's clear that your aides knew that the police reports from that scene didn't jibe with the video, and you say you weren't aware of that until the video came out. So they never talked to you about that?
No, it was not a discussion in the sense of that area, and they said, as you note, our goal was to get this video out once the investigation was concluded.
There are also a lot of reporters that analyzed those emails, and it showed that you and your aides were more concerned with sort of the message manipulation than actual policy. Are you too concerned with your image throughout all this?
I think if you look at it, we were actually very focused because on making sure on getting the policy right, as even the recent messages, as I said, when I was in Cuba and dealing with another situation. Where were the policy goals that we wanted to drive?
And this is pertaining to the Quintonio LaGuerre shooting.
Correct. And yes.
I want to move to a video question we have from Kurt Chang from Andersonville.
I think the only question would be, how can we trust you? How do we know we can trust you?
Okay, very broad question there.
Well, you have to look at not only the work I've done, but the way I kind of see it is, what are the pledges and commitments I made back when I ran for office in 2011 or 15? And do I hold those commitments? A lot of people sometimes run for office, make one pledge in the campaign, and then when they get to governing, they say they do another thing or another thing. I've made a series of pledges about making sure that Chicago, and my #1 goal, that every Chicagoan is better prepared, and the city of Chicago is better prepared for the future to seize it, to make the most economic gains. When I came into office, companies were leaving, people were leaving. That outflow has stopped. We've made investments in key areas, and following exactly the pledges I've made, line by line, and I'll be held accountable. And part of building that trust is to look at your work and say, are you going to do exactly what you said you were going to do? And that is what I try to do, and that's how I hold myself accountable to deliver the results. It's not, there are days in which maybe something I do you don't find you support or whatever, but am I true to the principles and true to the commitment I made when I asked for your vote?
I want to move on to some Springfield news, and you said earlier today that the governor has had perhaps the worst or least effective first year in office of any governor you can remember. What has he done wrong in your eyes?
Well, look, what I said was I appreciate the new tone and tenor that he's adopted into speech, because the tone and tenor in the last year has produced a record that is one of the most unproductive in Springfield session. Look, I know it's vogue in the Republican presidential primary to insult people. Okay? But that's not how you have to, that's a Republican presidential primary. You're a governor working with Democrats. Not alone, but Democrats are in the majority. I would say, let's put the insults aside and try ideas. You got to create an environment of trust and cooperation. You got to create a place where people of different views feel like they can propose ideas and come forward. We have spent a year of calling the Supreme Court corrupt, calling this individual a failure, calling that person corrupt. What makes you think people want to come over and want to work with you? You have an agenda. So some people may agree with parts of it, but it's I think there are parts of it that are extreme or radical. That said, calling people names is not the way to conduce them to work in a cooperative way to find common ground with you. So the new tone tenor, I'm hoping it extends to a point where he understands he has a role to create an environment that people can then come forward with ideas to work with. But insults do not produce ideas. I think an environment that is highly charged politically does not produce the progress we need to see. So what I would just say, I understand it's a vogue thing in the presidential primary to just insult your opponents. These are people you got to work with. I think put the insults aside, create an environment where people want to work with you even if they don't agree with you on everything.
Do you think he needs to abandon this pro-business, anti-union turnaround agenda, or at least detach it from budget negotiations?
Well, let me say this. I know people call it pro-business. I recruit a lot of companies to come to Chicago. Last 2 years, Chicago is #1 city for corporate relocations. The biggest thing businesses are looking for is certainty. There is nothing certain coming out of Springfield. So don't tell me that's pro-business. One of the strategies we had for Chicago, and which is why we reversed the outflow of companies and jobs, We've had a simple strategy from transportation to talent. We're investing in modernizing our transportation system so people can conveniently get from home to work, whether that's on public transportation or at our airport. Second, constantly investing in our education and skilled workforce, so to make sure, since 36% of the people have a four-year college degree in the city of Chicago, where it's only 27% in the United States, we can maintain that educational edge and have more people through our community colleges participate in an economic, vibrant Chicago. My view, those pieces of investment and a very transparent government, those pieces give people the certainty to come to the city of Chicago, which is why 2 weeks ago, GE Healthcare, worldwide, $18 billion company, left London and came to make Chicago its headquarters, joining GE Worldwide Transportation that left Pennsylvania to come to Chicago. So my view is certainty is what companies...
So you're saying he can get rid of the collective bargaining parts of his agenda and still be pro-business?
I think, well, let me put it this way. A number of students are leaving our universities right now, not signing up for the second semester because they don't have the resources. How is that pro-business? Companies in the world are searching for talent. And we have kids quitting college today because of the dysfunction of the state. Is that pro-business? It's not. I don't consider it, if you're on this, it's pro-business on that. My view is what moves us forward. I told the governor, and there's not friends in organized labor that I have, I'm for workers' compensation. We're one of the largest employers. So there are things that are important to do. Do I think workers' comp, some reforms, after 4 years of reforms, is more important than getting our kids a higher education, getting our kids an educational system, investing in our airports and our transportation system? No, I don't think it's more important. Would it be good to get it done? Sure. Do I think it's worth holding kids' education hostage or making sure that you can't go to a university and get a 4-year degree, which is your ticket in an era in which you earn what you learn? I don't believe that's pro-business. And I think all the uncertainty coming out of Springfield is bad for Illinois. It's not good for business, and it's not good for families, because uncertainty does not give you the confidence to make an investment. And so when everybody says, oh, this is pro-business, my view is uncertainty is anti-business, and that it makes Illinois not competitive.
You mentioned the word airports, and we have a lot of Northwest Side viewers that always want us to ask this question, and you met with a lot of them yesterday. Are you closing the door on keeping one of those diagonal runways open at O'Hare to get some of that plane traffic away from being right over the Northwest Side? Yeah,
but Paris, look, I share what the families in the city does. We both have the same goal. They also know that a vibrant O'Hare is important for the city's economic future. And I also believe our communities and neighborhoods are important for the vibrancy of our city. We have a different approach to how to achieve that goal. They want to keep the diagonal runway, which I just pointed right here, the diagonal runway open. It's not used because FAA's been clear about the safety and security around it. Keeping something open that isn't being used isn't going to reduce the noise that I want to see reduced. Modernizing the system allows, as Ginger Evans has noted, the head of aviation, the ability to get the nighttime relief that they want. We both have the same goal, just a different way of approaching it. But I do want them, you know, as I noted in our meeting, I want to make sure that they have an ability to have the kind of quality of life that they've invested in their home. They also appreciate, which I appreciate, an O'Hare that is an essential part of Chicago area's vibrant economy. And one of the reasons GE said they were moving their worldwide headquarters from London to Chicago, one of talent, our aviation system. And we just have a different approach
so
to achieving this.
So you can mitigate the noise the way they want mitigated without using that diagonal runway?
Well, it's not being used, it's barely being used now, so it's not helping.
Well, they complain about the noise now.
I know, but the reason it's not is because FAA is very clear, and that's who controls it. It's not safe for airplanes on the ground or planes in the air. Ginger's laid out a plan for alternation, so they're not the only kind of pathway, which requires us to continue to modernize the airport.
I want to quickly go to the subject of City Council ethics. Will Joe Ferguson's Inspector General office oversee aldermen eventually?
As I would say, the way I look at this, Paris, and this gets also to that question, you know, when I ran, I said we're going to have an IG, Inspector General, for every department and area, an agency in the city. It had not existed before. It does exist today.
No,
And so-
there's no one in that office today.
No. But there was never, no, that's not fair for your viewers, Paris. When I became mayor, there was never an inspector general in the city council.
And there
Wait,
was one.
No, then that's not, let's do the history right, because actually there's a history and there are facts. It never existed, ever. City council resisted it. I said we have to have one. They had one. They found somebody. That person has left, and I've been very clear. We're not going back to the days there's not an inspector general for city council. There will be one, and they're working towards an agreement. And I know there's
To
been
have Joe Ferguson.
the task force is working towards an agreement to have an inspector general and an office and also the person that is consistent with the inspector general as it relates to the rest of the city.
Okay, on that note, we have to leave. Mayor Emanuel, thank
Yeah.
you as always for being here.
Thank you, Paris.
And Chicago Tonight continues in a moment, so don't go away.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part through the generous support of the Julius Frankel Foundation.
Still to come on Chicago Tonight, great photographs from the past 150 years. And in tonight's viewer feedback, your reactions to Governor Rauner's State of the State address. But first, just how much can technology help level the playing field in the way people learn? That's a big question in play for former hedge fund analyst Sal Khan. His free nonprofit online learning website, Khan Academy, has delivered 700 million lessons to children and adults around the globe. Today he's focusing on Chicago as he launches his newest initiative. It's called LearnStorm. It's a math challenge that more than 30,000 local kids have already signed up for. And here to give us our own tutorial on Khan Academy itself is its founder, Sal Khan. Sal, welcome to Chicago Tonight.
Great to be here, Phil.
So for people not familiar with the website, not familiar with Khan Academy, tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, at a very high level, we're a not-for-profit organization with a mission of a free world-class education for anyone, anywhere. And what that means is people can go to Khan Academy. It's all free. They get thousands of videos on everything from basic arithmetic to college-level statistics or physics or art history. There's exercises that students can work on. It'll give them diagnostics, fairly sophisticated software that allows them to progress at their own pace. And the goal is really to allow as many students as possible to tap into their potential.
And we're looking at one of the tutorials on the screen now. Remind us, this is a story I've read several times, of how the Academy got started.
Yeah, it was a little bit happenstance. As you mentioned, I used to be an analyst at an investment firm, and one of my cousins needed help in math. And she was Nadia, who was 12 at the time. And she was in New Orleans, I was in Boston, and I offered to tutor her remotely. So I started working with her. That worked out well. Then I started working with her brothers. Then word got around the family that free tutoring was going on. And I found myself over the course of about 2 years with about 10, 15 cousins, family, friends around the country. And I started Khan Academy as just really a hobby to give them practice problems. So that's where the software came from. And then a friend suggested, well, why don't you scale up by making some of your lessons into videos and putting them onto YouTube? I immediately thought that was a horrible idea. I said, YouTube's for cats playing piano, not serious math.
Watch it. We happen to have a cat that plays the piano.
Yeah,
but
no,
go
I
ahead.
know. I'm very impressed by cats playing piano. But I got over the idea that it wasn't my idea. I gave it a shot. And long story short, my cousin said they liked me better on YouTube than in person. And other people who weren't my cousins started watching. And some of those early comments were just, this has helped me pass my algebra class. This is the reason I'm able to go back to college. This is what's helping my kids stay up with their peers. So this was early 2007. I was like, there's something real here. By 2009, I had trouble focusing on my day job. I set it up as a not-for-profit, and I tried to turn it into a real organization. And knock on wood, it seems like it's becoming one, or it's become one.
Give me an idea of the range of courses you offer, for example. I thought it was primarily STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, but you have art courses, did you say?
Yeah, we started in STEM. A lot of my cousins were having trouble with math or chemistry or physics, so that's where I started. But then, as we kept adding more content, I said, let me go younger. So there's some basic arithmetic things that you would see in kindergarten. It's all aligned to state standards, all the way to college level definitely science and mathematics, but we also have art history, and those videos aren't done by me. That's done in conjunction with some serious art historians, but they're really they make it very easy to connect and digest the material. We have a partnership with the Aspen Institute around civics, essentially, and history. We have a partnership with Bank of America around financial literacy. So we're really trying to do as broad of a content as possible so people can, and it's not just videos, and there's exercises, and there's articles, and there's simulations. There's a whole thing on computer programming.
Bill Gates, speaking of computer programming, Bill Gates is one of your big supporters. How did that come to be?
Yeah, you know, this was one of those things where this was summer of 2010, I was running a summer camp for middle school students, and it was based on this idea. I never viewed the virtual as a replacement for the physical. I always thought, well, if students can get lectures at their own time and pace, if they could get exercises at their own time and pace, it frees up the classroom to do deeper things, do simulations, do games. And I was in the middle of one of these simulations with a bunch of middle school students, and I got a text message from one of our early supporters saying, hey, I'm at the Aspen Ideas Festival in Aspen, Colorado, and I'm in the main pavilion, and Bill Gates is on stage the last 5 minutes talking about Khan Academy. And I had no idea. I boot the nearest 7th grader off of a computer and look for some evidence of this thing that I heard about. And Bill Gates was on stage just talking about how he used it himself, how he used it with his kids. And then a few weeks later, they reached out and they said, hey, if you have time, we'd love to meet and figure out how we could work with you.
Did you take that meeting?
Yeah, I was looking at my calendar completely blank. And so I said, yeah, I've got to maybe cut my nails on Wednesday, but I think I can meet Bill Gates.
So it started out as a one-man show in a closet, a microphone, just very low scale from what I understand. Now you have about 100 employees or so?
Yeah, we have a team of 100. About half of them are on the design and software engineering side. I mean, when I talk about students being able to go and get a diagnostic, it's fairly sophisticated software. I'd argue it's the best software out there, but we're doing it philanthropically. We're giving it away. We have a good content team that's helping us make sure we align to standards and we can fill out everything we're doing. And then we have a team that's working on programmatic stuff, reaching out to schools, working with teachers, working with communities.
How many of the videos do you personally do?
Oh, we're internationalizing now, so I only do them in English.
I see.
We have them in Spanish and Brazilian Portuguese and Hindi, and we keep adding there. But I've done about 4,000 or 5,000 videos myself. Just yesterday I did a few on special relativity, but we have other people as well now.
Well, with all these people, most of your funding comes from the world of philanthropy?
Yeah, I would say about 80% of our support comes from philanthropists, some big philanthropists, large foundations, Gates Foundation, et cetera, but a lot of support from individual users who, we help them get through a class and they donate $3.
So the Chicago Public Schools issued a press release saying that they were going to partner with Khan Academy. What will you be partnering to do?
Well, what Khan Academy, what we've built and continuing to build is a resource where if someone has the right mindset, they can learn what they need to learn. But the key is, how do you give people that mindset? And this challenge that we're doing in conjunction with Chicago Public Schools is called LearnStorm. And it's about students going on to Khan Academy, being supported by their teachers, by their communities, by their schools physically, and that we can celebrate not just achievement in math, but also the right learning mindset. So we can see if a student not only is progressing, but they're progressing at stuff that is challenging for them, that when they get something wrong, they don't give up, they keep going, so we can reward them for that perseverance. And so we're going to reward them virtually, but also have physical events. We just had the kickoff event earlier today, and we're going to have monthly cups where we give awards to the schools and the towns that are really showing that grit, that perseverance, and then we're going to have a finals event in a few months.
Because you're giving awards for hustle, and that's
Yes.
what you're talking about. So hustle and results, or is it?
It's both. Ability in math has always been kind of easy to measure. I could give you a test and, hey, if you got it all right, okay, you seem to know that material. But I think anyone you talk to in any industry will tell you, yes, it's nice to know math or science or reading or writing, but what's even more important is the mindset that when you fail at anything, that you don't give up, that you're always pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and you learn from that failure. And before, it was very hard to measure that, but we can actually see that on Khan Academy. If you show up to the site, you try a quadratic problem, you get a question wrong, but you don't give up, you can keep going. We say, hey, that's grit, that's perseverance. And so we're actually going to have 2 leaderboards, one for students that are achieving, that are learning a lot in math, but another for students that are showing a lot of that grit, that hustle.
There's a term that I think you may have used called flipping the classroom. Remind me what that is. Explain what that is, rather.
Yeah, this idea of a flipped classroom, and it's not my idea. To some degree, it's been happening in humanities seminars for thousands of years, where students read ahead of time, they go into class, they don't get a lecture, they have a discussion. But in STEM classes, in math and science classes, historically, you come to class and you get a lecture. But in a world now where you can get a on-demand video on exponents, or on logarithms, or on factoring polynomials, teachers don't have to spend valuable class time on that anymore. Instead, they can have the students do work on problem solving or work on simulations. And there's a lot of benefit there.
Because a student will have looked at a video and learned the basics so that they have the vocabulary for the discussion that ensues in the classroom. Is that it?
Exactly. And I think most people recognize that the most important part of a learning process is the doing as opposed to the listening. And now the doing can be done in a communal environment. Not only do you have your teacher there to help you, normally you used to do homework alone. If you're lucky, you might have someone to help you, but most students don't. But you also have your peers there to help you. And the teacher has real-time information on, okay, so-and-so is doing well, but he over there, he's struggling. So let me do a focused intervention on that one issue. So it really makes, in an ironic way, it makes the classroom, using technology to deliver the lectures and to do the exercises, it makes the classroom more human in a lot of ways.
Can you give me some more anecdotes of real-world feedback that you've gotten from students or parents?
Yeah, I mean, we get letters almost on a daily basis. Just earlier today, I heard from about a parent who had a child with autism, and this was what was allowing their child to keep pace. Just yesterday, I met a student who said, this is the reason why I'm able to go back to community college. I mean, we recently did a survey of college students, and we asked them, has Khan Academy had a meaningful impact on your education? It was a random survey, and we were hoping that maybe 5% would say yes. It actually turned out that 60% said yes.
60%?
60%. And of the students that were the first in their family to go to college, 64% said yes. And when we dug a little deeper, they said things like, this was a tutor that my family couldn't afford, or my school did not offer that rigorous class. I was able to get exposed to that material on Khan Academy, so I was ready for it when I got to college.
Now, some teachers say that they're worried that you're trying to supplant them. What is your reaction to that?
Well, there is this narrative out there when someone sees anything virtual, Amazon, they think, well, that's going to replace Barnes & Nobles. And sometimes that gets projected onto us.
Well, it didn't help Borders very much.
It didn't help Borders or Barnes & Nobles. That we are exactly against that. As a parent myself, if I had to pick between great technology and no teacher versus great teacher and no technology, I would pick the great teacher any day. Now, the ideal is you have both. And the way we view it is we can liberate the teacher. I mean, teachers are already so overworked. They have so much to do. And then to actually try to differentiate, if they have 25, 30 students in a class, how do they do that? Well, we can give them the software, give them the tools so that students can learn at their own pace. And then when they come into the classroom, they can have more focused interventions, dialogue, projects with their teachers.
Now, you have gotten some pushback from educators who say that you personally maybe are not the best teacher and that some of the content isn't always accurate. How do you respond to that?
Well, we take that very seriously, and constructive feedback is exactly that. And the good thing about this is in internet time, we can always look at what content is working, and working could be our students resonating with it, but also we vet stuff. We have in-house, we have PhDs, we have some of the leaders in their field vetting our content, but then when you put it out there, you have thousands of people who are looking at that content on a daily basis. And so we leverage all of that to really assess what's working, what's not, and we're constantly iterating and improving on it.
You yourself have 3 children. Are any of them going online and seeing what Dad is up to?
My oldest, he's 6, about to turn 7. There's a little bit of pressure for me, but yeah, he's doing it, and he also uses it in school, but he works on the math exercises, and every now and then he turns to me for help, but I like to encourage him to build that muscle of if dad's not there, if your teacher's not there, if your mom's not there, that you can still, the hustle factor that we live in a world now where there's so many resources that if you have the right mindset, you can pull them. Now, a lot of times you absolutely need that human being to motivate you, to keep you engaged, to give you that little extra insight, but there's a lot of other resources that can be the first line of attack.
What's the ultimate goal of Khan Academy?
Well, we have about 30 million users on a regular basis right now. We see ourselves over the next 5-10 years, we want to translate into all of the world's major languages, not just the videos, the software. We hope we can reach several hundreds of millions, maybe billions of students in fairly short order. For students in the developed world who have a school, we can empower that, we can liberate class time so that we can work on higher order things, and that if we're talking about a village in India someplace where maybe they don't have a school or they don't have someone in the village who can teach trigonometry, that students are able to tap into their potential still by accessing it through a mobile phone.
Sal Khan, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. And Chicago Tonight continues in a moment, so please stay with us. Familiar face. In the Loop, a photographic feast is now being served. To celebrate its 40th anniversary, the Museum of Contemporary Photography combed its archives to find the pictures that best reflect the museum's character. What they found were dramatic images from the 19th century to the 21st. Since its founding in 1976, Columbia College's Museum of Contemporary Photography has been on a mission to promote a greater understanding of the medium. Their anniversary exhibition includes distinctive works from the collection that blend art and history. The earliest photograph is a portrait of an Englishman taken in 1867 by Julia Margaret Cameron. The most recent was taken in South Africa in 2015. In between, there is incredible visual variety. Hollywood glamour shots, Andy Warhol Polaroids, a gelatin silver print of an Ansel Adams Yosemite photo.
Well, this room represents our entire collection in as broad of a scope as we could possibly manage. It represents 150 years of photographic history. We tried to also represent the diversity of approaches in the room.
Choosing 250 images from the more than 10,000 works in the collection was a daunting task.
It's a real challenge, and we had all of us kind of piping up and expressing our opinions and our favorites and what we thought were the most important works, but we also wanted to balance the more iconic images in the canon of photographic history with lesser known artists and things that are maybe a bit unexpected.
The still-growing archive is ultimately a research tool.
Our institutional philosophy is to collect in order to educate. So making the collection accessible to students and the general public is a priority for us. We feel like artists make works to communicate and that they can be very effective teaching devices.
I started at Columbia College as an MFA student in photography, and I started at the museum as an intern. And that experience actually really impacted the way that I thought about this exhibition, because my first job here was to go through our entire archive of photographs and make sure everything was in the right place. But as I did that, I got to look at every single image. And so every day was like this moment of discovery, of seeing this masterwork that I could only dream of, seeing, and I was totally awestruck by the experience. So I wanted to try to put together the exhibition in a way that would allow visitors to similarly have this experience of discovery and to see all of these amazing works of art put next to one another in this really dynamic display.
Probably the most iconic image on the wall is by Dorothea Lange. It was taken in 1936. It's called Migrant Mother. It was made during the Great Depression. We have almost 500 works by Dorothea Lange in the collection. Her stepdaughter lived in Chicago until she passed away recently, and she gave us a lot of Dorothea's work prints.
Beyond works by masters like Dorothea Lange and Walker Evans and Diane Arbus, the museum also maintains the Midwest Photographers Project.
That is a rotating archive of works by local artists and regional artists, where they loan us work for a period of 3 years, and we use it to teach from and also to make available in Chicago, for example, if the artist doesn't have gallery representation. We put the work on our website, we write about it for the artists, and so we support them, but they also loan us the work that we have at our fingertips, which is easier for us to access than the work in the vault. So we use it a lot for teaching.
In the era of smartphones and Instagram, not everything photographic is digital.
People often think that analog photography is something of the past, but I really think that artists have more expansive ability to work with all different types of materials and in all different types of ways now than they've ever had before. And so for me, it's just sort of building to all of these options that artists have in order to create the work and to respond to the world around them.
Photography has always been a constantly changing medium.
People are familiar with using it in their everyday lives, and it's a medium that has a tremendous capacity for storytelling. We use it to tell stories about our own lives.
The Museum of Contemporary Photography's 40th anniversary show just opened and runs through April 10th. The museum is on the campus of Columbia College and it's free of charge. For more information and a slideshow of these remarkable images, visit our website. Before we go, some viewer feedback. Many of you gave us your take on Governor Rauner's State of the State address. Let's cut drug abuse programs and at-risk youths, because we obviously have plenty of money for the extra policing and incarcerations that will result. That's like saving money by not doing oil changes on government vehicles anymore. Neither party is offering a solution to the mechanism which has brought Illinois to the brink of bankruptcy. Government mismanagement is like an anchor around our necks, dragging the state down. I'm thinking Rauner's State of the Union speech today might just be the shortest on record, because his accomplishments could collectively fit on the head of a pin. Crocodile tears and hand-wringing from both sides, but the neediest citizens are being played as pawns in a contest between executive and legislative leaders. The governor did not address the fact that Illinois does not have a budget. It is about the time to lock all of them in a room and not let them out until they've worked together to come up with a budget they can pass. We are the laughingstock of the nation. And that is our show for this Thursday night. I hope you join us tomorrow night at 7 for the Weekend Review. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Phil Ponce, and I thank you for watching. We leave you with more from the Museum of Contemporary Photography. Good night.
Closed captioning for this program is made possible by Clifford Law Offices, proudly celebrating more than 20 years of the Robert Clifford Symposium on Tort Law and Social Policy at DePaul University College of Law.